October 19th, 1982. A man walks into a hotel room near Los Angeles airport carrying a briefcase. Inside that briefcase was $24 million worth of cocaine. What he did not know was that every second was being filmed by the FBI. Every meeting, recorded. Every call, recorded. The man in that hotel room was John DeLorean, one of the most brilliant automotive engineers America had ever produced. The man who had transformed General Motors, the man who walked away from the most powerful car company on earth to build his dream. And in a few seconds, it would all end. But to understand how America's greatest car visionary ended up in a hotel room with $24 million in cocaine, we need to go back 57 years to the slums of Detroit and a boy who refused to accept the life he had been given. John Zachary DeLorean was born in 1925 in Detroit, Michigan, the car capital of the world, but not the glamorous side of it. His father, a Romanian immigrant, worked the Ford assembly line and drank away his wages. His mother raised 4 boys on whatever was left. John grew up watching gleaming cars roll off assembly lines, knowing his family couldn't afford one. He turned that anger into obsession. By 30, he had 2 engineering degrees, an MBA, and no patience for the way things had always been done. When he walked through the doors of General Motors in 1956, everyone who met him knew they were dealing with someone different. 6'4", silver-tongued, movie star, handsome. But DeLorean was not like any executive General Motors had ever seen. He wore turtlenecks in a world of grey suits, drove a Ferrari to the office, dated Hollywood models. He even had plastic surgery to look younger, in an era when no executive would ever admit to such a thing. He was a rock star in a world of accountants. In 1964, he did the impossible. He turned Pontiac, a dying, irrelevant brand that GM was quietly considering shutting down, into the hottest nameplate in America. The GTO was his idea. A powerful V8 engine dropped into a mid-sized body, affordable, brutal, irresistible. It became the world's first muscle car, a brand new category of automobile that DeLorean had invented almost single-handedly. At 40 years old, he became the youngest division head in General Motors history. By 1972, he was vice president of all car and truck production for the entire GM line. He had a $650,000 salary, a New Jersey mansion. He was on track to become CEO of the largest car company on earth. He had everything, but John DeLorean was suffocating because General Motors did not build cars, it built committees. Every bold idea he brought to the table was watered down by consensus. Every risk was avoided. Every dream was managed to death by men who had never built anything in their lives. In 1973, John DeLorean did something that stunned the automotive world. At 48 years old, earning a fortune on track to become CEO, he resigned. He walked away from the most secure future any man in Detroit had ever been handed. He walked away from General Motors because he had an obsession nobody at GM would ever let him pursue. He wanted to build his own car, not a committee car, not a market research car, his car, and nothing was going to stop him. For 4 years, DeLorean designed, argued, sketched, and dreamed. The design that emerged was unlike anything that had ever rolled off an assembly line. Gull-wing doors that opened upward like wings, never used on a production car before. A stainless steel body that would never rust, never corrode, never fade. An engine in the rear. A cockpit that felt like a fighter jet. He called it the DMC-12. The world would come to know it simply as the DeLorean. To build it, he needed a factory, and he found the most unlikely partner imaginable, Belfast, Northern Ireland. 1978, Northern Ireland was bleeding. The IRA was bombing. Businesses were burning. The city was divided by walls of concrete and hatred that had been built to keep neighbors from killing each other. Unemployment was above 20%. Young men had almost no future to look forward to. Catholic and Protestant families alike had lost sons to the violence. There was no neutral ground, no shared hope, no reason to believe tomorrow would be different from today. When John DeLorean arrived promising a factory, promising 2,600 jobs, people wept. His factory in the Dunmurry suburb of Belfast became something that had not existed anywhere in that city for years. A place where Catholic and Protestant workers stood side by side on the same assembly line, with separate gates at opposite ends of the building, because the workers came from communities still divided by violence, but standing together inside, building something none of them had built before. By January 1981, the first DeLorean rolled off the production line. Workers who had lived through the worst years of the Troubles, who had watched their city tear itself apart, finally had something to be proud of. They had built the most distinctive car in the world, and for a brief, extraordinary moment, it felt like anything was possible. But from the very beginning, the dream had cracks. The DeLorean looked like the future. It drove like the past, 130 horsepower, 0 to 60 miles per hour in 10 seconds. A Toyota Corolla of the same year was faster. The car was supposed to democratize the sports car, to bring something extraordinary within reach of ordinary Americans. But it cost $25,000, twice the price of the average car. More than a Porsche 911 in some markets. It looked stunning. It drove like a disappointment. And the automotive press did not hold back, and something else was wrong, something much darker. DeLorean had brought in Colin Chapman, founder of Lotus Cars and one of the greatest chassis designers in the history of motorsport, to engineer the car. Chapman was a genius. His Lotus Cars had won multiple Formula One World Championships. Whatever reservations people had about DeLorean, nobody questioned Chapman's brilliance. But Chapman and DeLorean had also been quietly moving money. Approximately £17 million of British government money, the same public funds intended to pay Belfast workers' wages and keep the factory running, had been diverted through a shell company registered in Panama. On December 16, 1982, Colin Chapman died suddenly of a heart attack. He died before he could be charged. To this day, 4 decades later, nobody knows exactly where that £17 million went. (1982), America's worst economic recession since the Great Depression. Interest rates hit 21%. Unemployment was climbing. Consumer confidence had collapsed. Nobody was buying sports cars. Of the roughly 9,000 DeLoreans that had been built, thousands sat unsold in dealership lots across America. The gull-wing doors that were supposed to turn heads were now just an expensive conversation piece for cars nobody would drive home. On February 19, 1982, the DeLorean factory was put into receivership. 2,600 workers in Belfast, Catholic and Protestant alike, received their notices. The factory that had been their hope, their purpose, the one place in that divided city where they had stood on common ground, went silent. But John DeLorean was not ready to accept it. He needed $17 million to pull the company out of receivership and restart production. He needed it immediately, and the banks had stopped calling him back. He started making calls to anyone who might be able to help. One of those calls connected him to a man named James Hoffman. Hoffman said he knew investors. He said he could find the money. He said he could save the company. What DeLorean did not know was that James Hoffman was a convicted drug smuggler, and he was working for the FBI. For months, the FBI recorded every conversation, every meeting, every phone call, every desperate negotiation as DeLorean reached further and further from his comfort zone, trying to save his company and the 2,600 jobs he had promised to Belfast. Hoffman slowly introduced DeLorean to undercover agents posing as Colombian drug investors. He promised the money was available. He promised the deal was safe. He promised it was the only way. DeLorean had no criminal record, no criminal history, no criminal instinct. He was a car designer, a father, a man with his workers' futures on his conscience. He went along. October 19th, 1982, the same morning that Northern Ireland officially announced the DeLorean factory would close permanently in 10 days. DeLorean flew into Los Angeles from New York. He took a taxi to the Sheraton La Reina Hotel near Los Angeles International Airport. He walked to the room. He sat down. The suitcase was brought out from the hotel closet and placed on the table in front of him. He opened it. He smiled. It's better than gold. Within minutes, federal agents flooded the room. John DeLorean, handcuffed, silver-haired, looking solemn, was led through a crowd of press and spectators that jammed the courthouse corridor. He was charged with 8 felony counts, conspiracy to distribute cocaine. Facing 67 years in federal prison, bail was set at $5 million. The 62-day trial that followed captivated the American public. The prosecution had everything: video evidence, audio recordings, multiple witnesses, a defendant on camera holding cocaine and describing it as better than gold. The case looked airtight. But through every single day of the 2-year nightmare, one person never left John DeLorean's side. His wife, Christina Ferrari, one of the most successful fashion models and television personalities in America, sat beside him in that courtroom every day. She could have walked away. The media had already tried and convicted him. The public had made up its mind. She stayed. Through every accusation, every cross-examination, every day that the prosecution laid out its evidence against the man she had married, she stayed. DeLorean's defense team made a single argument: entrapment. Hoffman had approached DeLorean, not the other way around. A man with no criminal record, no criminal history, no criminal instinct, had been systematically identified as a target by the FBI, slowly manipulated over months, surrounded by undercover agents, and guided step by step into a situation no innocent person would ever have found themselves in without the government's construction of it. The defense also produced evidence of gross misconduct by the federal investigators themselves, changed testimony, factual inconsistencies, and questions about whether the operation had been legally conducted. August 16, 1984. After 2 years of proceedings, 62 days of trial, and the attention of the entire nation, the jury delivered their verdict: not guilty. On all 8 counts, John DeLorean walked out of that courthouse a free man, but everything else was already gone. The company was gone. The factory in Dunmurry, Belfast was gone. The 2,600 workers, Catholic and Protestant alike, who had built something together in the most divided city in Europe, were gone. John DeLorean spent the rest of his life in and out of financial difficulty. More legal battles followed: fraud charges, civil suits, creditors pursuing him for decades. Christina Ferrari, who had stood beside him through the trial, divorced him months after the acquittal. He died on March 19, 2005. He was 80 years old, largely forgotten by the industry he had transformed. And then something extraordinary happened. In 1985, a film called Back to the Future was released, and the filmmakers chose the DeLorean as their time machine. It was the perfect choice. A car that looked like it came from the future, built by a man who had dreamed too far ahead of his time. A car that had briefly represented everything that was possible and then crashed spectacularly back to Earth. The The film became one of the highest grossing of the decade, and suddenly the DeLorean was not just a failed sports car from a bankrupt company, it was immortal. Today, of the 9,080 DeLoreans ever built, more than 6,500 are still on the road, one of the highest survival rates of any production car in automotive history. They sell at auction for $40,000 to over $100,000, more than triple their original price. A company in Texas has been restoring and supplying new parts for every DeLorean on the road for decades. John DeLorean wanted to build something that would last forever. He didn't get the ending he planned for, but the car outlasted everything. If you thought the DeLorean story was extraordinary, wait until you hear about Mazda. Because before John DeLorean ever dreamed of building his car, there was a company in Japan that survived something even a Hollywood screenwriter wouldn't believe. The Mazda story is already on this channel. Click the video on your screen and watch it now.